Hey everybody, it's Love and Relo, the voice of the relocation industry. I am your host, Ben Cross, and I am blessed and honored to be with you today. We've got a fantastic show. I'm already excited. I was talking to this gentleman in the green room, which is like a virtual green room, because it's not a place. But anyway, I was talking to him, and I'm already feeling his vibe. I think we're going to have a lot of fun. He's got a great sense of humor, really smart guy. His name's Ben Sookia. His name's Ben. I mean, what's not to like? So anyway, we're going to have a blast. We're going to talk about all sorts of things. We're talking about global immigration. We're going to talk about a little footy. We're going to talk about some deep stuff, some EQ, emotional intelligence kind of stuff, all sorts of stuff. So it's going to be great. So stay tuned. If you're watching right now, gosh, we got 15 people already on Facebook. I was told there might be a lot of Mauritians tuning in. So very excited to have the Mauritian contingent. I've been looking for a country to be big in overseas, and I think Mauritius might be my best chance. So I'm excited about how this might go today. Anyway, people are just coming in left and right. So go ahead, leave a comment, give Ben a shout out, tease him if you want to, if you know him personally. Real quick, I want to talk about the book club. Book of the month for the month of August is Take Control of Your Job Search, 10 Emotions You Must Master to Land the Job. If you are looking for a job, if you know someone who is, and let's face it, we all probably know someone who is, get them this book. If you want a free copy of this book, reach out to me, reach out to super producer Janet. We will get you hooked up. The author, Lauren Herring, the CEO of Impact Group, is giving away free books to people who want to participate in our live book club discussion on August 31st. So get in, get your free book, get your job, turn your life around. Anyway, it might be a little much. I don't know. Also want to go ahead and thank our sponsor. Our sponsor today is the IEM conference, just like the in-person event you're familiar with over 2,000 people from 120 countries. The virtual annual meeting and expo will be filled with opportunities for networking with your fellow IEM members, learning from industry experts in global mobility, and conducting demonstrations of products and services, nurturing relationships with other professionals in the field. No masks are required. Your time zone is no limit, with 24-hour real-time attendance and access to the recorded sessions for 30 days post-conference. Go to IAMmeetings.com to register today. And our corporate friends, our corporate mobility practitioners and HR people get in free. So if you want a free pass to the IAM conference to get some thought leadership, we got some amazing speakers, hit me up. I'll send you the promo code. I'll hook you up. Can't wait. Without further ado, let's go ahead and welcome our guest, Ben Sookia. Ben, how are you?
Hey, Ben, how are you going? Good to speak to you. Finally, I know we've been planning this for a few weeks, right?
Yeah, dude, this is so great to have you on, man. I remember my first impression of you. I was doing Latam week, and you put a comment in there, and you're like, you need to learn Portuguese, so like the people that you're talking to, you can relate to them. I'm sure they'll appreciate it. I'm like, I don't like this guy. Get him out of my comments right now.
Are we just going to do the whole show in Portuguese now? Then that's
what we're going to do, if it's all right with you. Yes.
No, I'll give it. No, I think English is better. Let's stick with English.
All right, there we go. This is awesome.
But thank you for having me. It feels a little bit strange. I know that you usually do your show and people are in their offices or somewhere a bit more formal. I'm literally in my living room and kitchen, which is open plan. So welcome to my home and look forward to the chat.
No, this is great. People don't normally sit in their fireplace, but I'm excited to see how it goes. It could be a new element. You should try it.
I think so. Give it a go, right?
This is fantastic. No, this is going to be a lot of fun. I can tell already. Let's go ahead and see who's checking in. We got a whole bunch of people, 36 people on Facebook right now checking in. Let's see. We got a bunch of people tuning in from the LinkedIn as well. Super excited. Everybody seems to like you for some reason.
Say hello to me. I think people should say hello to us, right?
Yeah, they should, right? They should say something. All right, we got let's see here. We got Adam Sookia. What a coincidence. Has this started?
It has.
I'm told we are on Mauritian time today.
It's true. I'm allowed to say that Mauritians have the tendency, if you say to meet at 9 o'clock, maybe they'll dial in, if you're lucky, half an hour late. That's good. So I'm allowed to say that, I think,
Okay, I shouldn't say that. My bad. We're just late. We're just late. That's
exactly. It's fine. It's all good.
We got another Sookia in the house here. Are you on yet? Yes,
I'm on. Say hello.
punctual.
And speak in Creole. You know, we can do this in Creole as well if you want.
You're always trying to get me to speak another language. Don't you know I'm from America? We
Okay,
don't speak
okay,
other
we'll
languages.
stick
We
to
don't know
English.
anything. We're just ignorant over here. Mikhail Sookia, go Mauritius.
Hello, that's my brother. He's in Australia, and it's 6 o'clock in the morning. So thank you for dialing in, and sister-in-law as well.
Wow, that's fantastic. Welcome from Australia. We don't get a ton of Australians, so I'm very excited about it. Go ahead, hit that like button, hit the heart button. Let Ben know you love him and you like him and all the emotions. Brian Smith checking in from St. Louis. Jamie Massler, cheers
Hello,
from
Jamie.
in sunny Mississippi. What's up, Jamie? Jamie did confirm, by the way, that he was not making stuff up, and that guy did steal that PPP money and buy that Lamborghini and then crash it, and he was a rogue mover in the United States. Oh, man. Fiona, hey, Ben, this is such a great show, so enjoy it.
Bonjour, Fiona. Ça va? I'm going to stop now. Fiona's in Paris. Fiona's in Paris, so thank you for dialing in.
Lovely, Fiona. Thank you. Molly Feldman, hello from Jacksonville. That's in Florida. Victoria McCullough, hi, Ben and Ben. This is great. Henri Dussois, good evening, good day, everyone. Henri, stop cussing in the comments. Kelly, hello from San Francisco.
Hey,
Gabby, very excited for the global immigration talk today and the donut insights.
Hey, Gabby.
All right. Gabby, you brought it up. Let's go there, all right? So, Ben, let's hop into this real quick, man. So you and I were talking, and we're like, okay, what are we going to talk about, right? And something you brought up, which I found fascinating, was this donut idea. And you had my attention. You said donuts. You knew your audience. You captured me from the word go. But donuts aren't about pastries. What is this donut idea about?
Okay. It's a big idea, so bear with me. And if it's not clear, then feel free to ask me questions. Before we jump into the idea of the donut, just to give you a bit of background about me, I've been working in global immigration for around 10 years and been coordinating and working with Global Council. I know you've had guests that have done that before. Around 5 years ago, I was working for a big immigration law firm managing VIPs. And my job was to literally just understand the individual moving, understand their family situation, develop a relationship on a human level with them. And it was quite an interesting job. It got me to kind of form a connection and know more about building relationships, which is very important in the mobility industry. And a skill that is absolutely fundamental to be successful with that is the ability to have empathy and emotional intelligence. And I'm a huge fan of empathy. People that are watching this probably are bored of me talking about it. Just to recap very briefly, empathy is the ability to step into the shoes of another person, understand their perspective, and use their actions and behavior to guide how you dictate the relationship. So I learned about that. I've got some things with me, Ben. So
yeah, we got props. We like props. Let's do it.
Anyone that loves emotional intelligence and empathy, or the idea of empathy, needs to read this book. It's by a social philosopher called Roman Krznaric.
Can you put the book closer so I don't have to put my face in the camera? Because that's going to get ugly. Yeah.
There you go.
Roman, Krznaric. Oh,
yeah.
Empathy. All right.
Say it with confidence and it will be fine. But he wrote a book. Yeah. He wrote a book and he defined, I will get to the donut, so bear with me. He wrote a book and he defined 6 habits that will help you build your skills of empathy. Super interesting. It's a skill that you can develop. Some people can be born with it, but you can improve your empathy levels. Certain people are better at it than others. Women are better at.
How do you improve your empathy levels, right? So you identify this as a problem, or somebody might identify it for you, and you're like, hey, I want to work on my empathy. How do you do that?
So his book goes into quite a bit of detail on that, and there are 3 or 4 tips that he recommends the most. The first is to be curious about strangers. So to really, you might be on the bus, you might be at a conference. I know we'll talk about that later, but really don't just think about the circle that you're already in. If you go on holiday and traveling is a perfect one, then talk to a stranger, speak to someone that you wouldn't normally speak to, and you can really develop this skill. It's really about putting yourself out there and doing something that you wouldn't do, and it can really help you build that level of empathy. And empathy is something that can help us be better with clients, but much
so
better with
practicing by putting ourselves in situations which require empathy is one of the good ways to practice that muscle. Okay, cool.
It's one way. Another, I won't go into all of them, but another is to take an imaginative leap. What that means is I would sometimes deal with VIPs, and they were sometimes very difficult, and we would be talking about the casework or the situation, and they would be frustrated by something. And one thing that I did, and one thing that I would recommend, is to assume that maybe there is something that you don't know. And that takes a lot of skill. Sometimes it might be by the speed of them talking, or it could be something that they say that's very small, but you really need to assume, actually, maybe there is something that we don't know that they haven't said that could be wrong, that has made them upset. And that is empathy, really. It's a difficult skill, but it's important. And it's not just important with work. How many of us have been in relationships where, whether it's the man or the woman or whatever, in a situation where one person says, you don't understand what I'm talking about. So it's really taking that leap to actually find out what is going on, maybe by someone not saying something at all, maybe by judging their body movement or their language. It's a difficult one, but you can develop that skill.
Well, oftentimes also when they say you're not understanding what I'm talking about, it's just because that person is choosing not to understand, choosing not to receive or accept what the other person is saying. And so in that way, it's a choice, right? Going back to choosing to take the imaginative leap. Anyway, fascinating. Okay.
Yeah. So I learned about empathy. I read his book. I went to a lot of talks. I learned about emotional intelligence, which is one of the skills of emotional intelligence is empathy. And over sort of 3 or 4 years after that, I've spoken at conferences about empathy. I've spoken to friends. They know all about that. And then we got to lockdown, in March, and a lot of us had a lot of time on our hands. I watched a lot of Netflix and junk TV.
I was waiting for you to say something smart. Like I studied and bettered myself. I got another master's degree or something like that.
No, I mean I do like a bit of trash TV. This stuff is interesting too, but let's be honest, we like to have some downtime, right?
Yeah.
And I came across this idea of donut economics on Roman's Twitter page, I think, and I thought, well, I like donuts, but economics doesn't sound that interesting. But I thought, got some time on my hands, let's look into this. So the first thing I did is I kind of researched what economics meant. I don't know about you, Ben. Do you know? Could you define economics to me?
I prefer not to.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm with you. I'm going to read.
Economics actually has a lot more to do with people, I think, than people realize. Right? Definition of economics, you think of like the stock market or something, but it actually has to do with the way that people interact with one another and what makes and incentivizes people to do things.
You're absolutely right. Economics has
smarter
changed.
than I look. Go ahead.
Well, there you go.
One language, but I'm good at it.
So the definition of economics now, it's not that interesting. I'm going to briefly go over it. It's the science which studies human behavior as a relationship between ends and scarce means which have alternative uses. Not that interesting, right? For me, anyway. I mean, it is interesting, but it doesn't grab my attention in the global mobility kind of sphere. But donuts, yeah?
Donuts.
Economics.
I'm back. I'm in.
So I did a bit more research, and I always like to ask why or where things come from. So I did that with economics, actually. I kind of went into Google and I looked in the origins of economics, and it brought me back to ancient Greek times, Greek mythology, actually. And the original meaning of the word economics, believe it or not, is it's a lot shorter and it's a lot more simple. And it is the art of household management.
Home economics.
Exactly. Now, I don't know, does that bring anything to your mind if you think, who is an artist of household management, Ben? Who's good at that in your opinion?
My wife manages my household.
Exactly.
I hate to say it because it sounds kind of like, but I mean, she does. She takes care of all the bills and makes sure everything is not falling apart. Yeah.
You're absolutely right, and it's not necessarily always women, it can be men, but it's someone that is good at managing the household. And like you, the first person I thought of is my mum. My mum is an economist, or people that I worked with previously. My first manager, good friend of mine, Angela, she managed huge corporate accounts, but she went home and she, with her husband, managed the house and her 2 kids. So economics is actually exactly what you said. It's about people. It's about people, and it's an art, in my opinion, or the origin was, and not a science. So I was really intrigued by this.
So what is the Doughnut economics? What is that?
Finally, all right, I'm getting onto it now. So I took the time, and well, actually, do you know what I did first? I bought an actual donut.
Dude, don't play with me right now, okay? Because I got a Rice Krispie treat in my lunchbox over here. I might eat right now.
I mean, if you're hungry, you've got to.
I'm always hungry, man. Anyway, it's an internal struggle. Go ahead.
So this book, Doughnut Economics.
7 ways to think like
a 21st century economist.
All right.
The author of this book is actually the partner of Roman Kersnaric. Her name is Kate Raworth. And what she is arguing, or what she has suggested, is that we live in a world that focuses just on growth, increasing GDP. We want our highest salary.
Increasing the economy, increasing the stock market, up. Yeah.
Right. Correct. And the reality is that we can't continuously live with endless growth. You can't have growth and growth and growth. At some point, that has to end. Growth in salary, growth in the price of our property.
People, right? I mean, we stopped growing when we were about 18. If we kept growing, we'd be gigantism, and we'd have problems, and we'd die early.
I'm not going to stand up, but I stopped growing when I was about 50. I'm not tall. So yeah, I know all about not growing as well.
So my economy is a little bit better than your economy.
Exactly.
I'm still finding ways to expand myself.
What Kate did was she argued that actually what we need instead of growth, what another option is for us to think about, is a healthier type of donut. And she spent some time and she came up with this, if you can see.
Okay,
and
there's some fine print in there, but there's words on it. Those aren't sprinkles.
What this is on the outer layer of the donut she created is everything that is needed for the environment to survive. Okay.
Like the environment, like trees, water, air, like environment.
Well, I'm talking about climate change. I'm talking about ocean acidification, biodiversity, pollution. We need to make sure that is under control. Otherwise, what will happen is there will be environmental disasters, there will be pandemics, there will be more crises ahead of us.
Right.
And that was on the outside. And on the inside is what everyone needs for society to thrive. And that's food, that's housing, that's water, that's gender and racial equality. And so what Kate is saying is that what we need to do is rethink economics in a more human way, a more artistic way, to focus on human behavior and to focus on the fact that actually we need the environment to thrive and we need society to thrive. And we need to find a balance between those two things.
That's fascinating, right? Because when we're going into a presidential election here in the United States, right? And so we're listening to these, candidates, right? These candidates, and they're out there and they're kind of giving their ideas, right, and everything. And of course, all the ones with the really interesting ideas don't make it to the end, right? I mean, re-electing different versions of the same person every year, the same man every year. But what's interesting was one of the guys was talking about we need a different way to measure our country's success. It can't just always be about how high is the stock market. It can't always be about how low is the unemployment. It needs to look at how many people are addicted to opiates. How many people can afford to, how many people are hungry and food insecure in our country? How many people are obese? How many people are, and we need to start looking at a scorecard that reflects the health of the people in our country and not just look at our economic output, which is only one metric. And I found that argument to be so interesting and so on the nose. And anyway, I mean,
No, you're right, Ben. And you know what? I've got loads of things with me. It's that you're able to already see, because what they've done with the donut, this has been around for a number of years, is there's a website that people can go to and they can click on a country and they can see where they are overshooting on the environment, and they can see where they're overshooting in society. So for anyone watching, the website is called www.goodlife.leeds.ac.uk, and you can click
All
in
right.
the US.
Janet's going to put that up there, but it's goodlife.leeds, like LEEDS, like
Correct.
in England.
Correct. Yeah. .ac.uk.
.ac.uk.
UK.
Jen,
So
you got that?
yeah, and you can compare. You can see what's going on in Costa Rica, what's going on in the US, and it's really interesting. So that's the donut idea. And one more point before I talk about what this has got to do with global mobility. This is something that can be applied on a global level and a local level. So in fact, already there are cities and towns that are already looking at this donut, and they're saying this is what we want to do, and this is the model. And there's an organization that's going to be launched where people can actually see, not just in their cities and towns, what businesses can do, what individuals and families can do. Because even in the household that I'm living in now, I used to drive my car everywhere, but I started learning about this, and now I'm taking my bike. I'm using less plastic bags. So it can be applied in many different ways.
So is there donut microeconomics?
I believe, that's a really good question. It's a complicated one. What they're trying to do is apply it on a macro level and a micro level. So
I could look at like how the United States is performing on a macro level, and then I could like put in my address, and I could drill down there as they go through my garbage to see how many plastic bags are thrown out.
You can't do that yet. You can look at the US at a macro level, but you can't look at your town. But what you can do is businesses can learn about this, and individuals can learn about this. So it's something that's already being applied. And in fact, there are cities in the US, there are cities in other countries as well, that have looked at the donut, and they're already starting to say, look, we want to change. Amsterdam was the first big city that said, we want to adopt the donut. Copenhagen also said that they want to adopt the donut. Cities in the US, Portland and Philadelphia, are already trying to replicate the donut. And actually, if you look around the world, there are lots of cities and towns that are already trying to do this. At some point in September, the Doughnut Economics Action Lab is going to be launched, where people can use the donut as a template, whether it's at a business level, whether it's a corporation, or whether it's a town, or whether it's a much smaller, whether it's a family as well. So people can learn from this and change the way they think and work.
So what does that have to do with global mobility?
This is the big one. I had the idea, and then I thought, well, I work in global mobility. And this is where we think about being connected and global interconnectedness, really. And what I believe it has to do with global mobility is the fact that we work in an industry that is gigantic. It's gigantic, and it is so global. It's so global. It covers every country in the world. If one person moves from one place to another, then we can spread the word, or we can promote this idea. And when I say idea, I'm talking about the donut, but what I'm really talking about is a sustainable way, sustainable migration, I suppose would be the best term. So actually people say, yes, you're moving from one place to another. And yes, there is the argument where you're traveling and that is clocking up the carbon miles. But maybe there are things that we can do. We can look at the donut and say, we're doing this that overshoots it, but what can we do to improve, or what can we do to actually benefit the environment or society with people traveling to other countries? And maybe we can focus on the countries that these people are going to, or the individual. But I think global immigration or global mobility is so globally connected. It's a planetary thing, Ben. So you're taking the donut, which is a planetary thing, and you're taking the global mobility industry, which is obviously connected to every country in the world. But we're united again by this idea, and businesses can think about this. It's a whole separate. I can talk about that as well. But the more we look at this on an individual level, and the more we look at this on a business level, then we can start to create a world that is better and fairer and healthier and more equal as well. Because we need to create that.
Okay, very interesting. We got some comments coming in here and some questions as well. This is great here. Let's see here. Let's see here. We got some lowbrow stuff here. Tim Quirk, I'm so hungry now. He says, I wish it was the rice cake economy because I wouldn't be so hungry right now. Tim's hilarious. Love you, man. Henri Dussois. Shout out a link there. Charlie Beatty's looking forward to the Arsenal conversation. Let's see here. We got a question here from Gurmak, I'm guessing.
That's well pronounced.
Thank you. I'm really working on it. This job is really hard. We get people from all over the world, and they're just throwing stuff out there, and I'm just like pronouncing stuff for the first time live. How do we break these preconceptions of, quote, growth in our everyday working lives?
Wow.
How do we reframe it?
Okay. So, by the way, Gurmak is my best friend of 25 years. So, thank you for asking that question. That's interesting. A little bit complicated.
He me up yesterday. He was supposed to be on the show, and he flaked out on me at the last minute. Very interesting.
Okay, I know Gurmak works for Credit Suisse, an investment bank, and I understand the perspective that he's coming from. Why should we buy into this? You know, what's in it for me? Good question. You know, why should we? I think we need to challenge the donut, and the biggest challenge to the donut is greed. Really, isn't it? We live in a greedy society, Ben.
Yeah.
I don't know what you think.
Yeah, I mean, as soon as you started talking about taking the bicycle everywhere, I was like, you kind of lost me, you know?
Yeah, it's true. We live in a greedy society, and we need to answer that and address that. So my response to that question, and to break the preconceptions of growth, and I hope I answered the question, is we need to appeal to people on a human level. We need, you know, whether it's a corporate environment, whether it's a politician, we need to connect with people on a human level, and we need to make them understand that this is for the benefit of all, because we need to look much further ahead. I know we're going to talk about legacies at some point.
Yeah, so what you're arguing is we need to do this because it is the right thing to do. And exactly. When you study economics and you look at the definition that you read earlier, you know, economics talks about why people do things and why they are incentivized to do them. And what I'm not hearing yet is, what is the incentive? Is it feeling good about yourself? Is it not being shamed publicly by your community because you are using single-use plastic and driving your car everywhere? You know, like there needs to be some sort of a urgent incentive, something that's present, urgent, I think.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And I actually had a really interesting, we're going to talk about communities at some point. I had a coffee with the guy that owns a local coffee shop. I think he might be watching. And we talked about exactly this. What is the incentive? In my opinion, we need to look at how, and we're talking about businesses right now, we need to look at how businesses think and how businesses operate. And there are different levels. Finance is an important one. Finance is key, and we all need to make money. And we all need our businesses to survive ultimately. And I agree with that, and I understand that. But for me, on an individual level, and a human level, and a business level, we need to think more, especially in the world that we are living in now, about purpose. What is our purpose? And what is the purpose of the business?
And what I'm seeing right now is that there is an incentive, because people are consumers are choosing to vote with their dollars, and they're choosing to support companies that have sustainability and that are looking at these things, right? And so you're seeing corporations, especially this year, right, coming out on civil issues, right, and taking a stand, whether it be Black Lives Matter or be the LGBTQ stuff going on here in the U.S. and the Supreme Court rulings and things. You know, so people are taking a stand. Our companies are taking a stand, and people are choosing to support those companies. So there becomes a monetary incentive to those companies to become good actors, right? And as
Correct.
as the internet starts to report on these things, like we're talking about, right, with the Doughnut, website checker, right? How's your donut looking website? I think as more transparency comes about,
Yeah.
I think these things start to happen. That's my guess on it.
Yeah, there are 3 or 4 options that businesses can do. If you work for a company or you're a senior stakeholder, the first is they can do nothing. That's okay. No one is obligated. I'm not here to say what you should be doing. I'm simply presenting an idea. But doing nothing is one option. The second is doing maybe the bare minimum. So let's say you can incorporate into the values of your website, but not really mean it, but just say it because it's there. The third is to include it, let's say, to win work, RFPs, and you can include that as a way to attract new business, which is what you mentioned. The fourth is a higher aspiration. It's trying to go for net zero and no carbon emissions. And then the fifth, the highest one, if people are interested by what I've said and want to look into it further, the fifth is the donut. Buy into the donut, and you can see it around the boardroom
and basically report and participate in the donut. Yeah.
And sorry, I keep talking, but it's not just businesses that will make this thrive. It's not just one business. What we need to do is think about something that they call the circular economy, which is similar to the donut, where at the moment we're operating with a take, make, use, lose kind of system, where you take some materials, you make an iPhone, you use the iPhone, and then you lose it, and you will throw it away, and you get the new iPhone. What we need to think about is building a more regenerative and distributive system, where we have products and we actually use them, but we can reuse them later. And Ben, there are companies that are already doing this. There's one in the UK. They make toilet paper, and they're called Who Gives a Crap? Seriously,
reusable toilet paper. I cannot wait to hear
that. It's called Who Gives a Crap. Please feel free to Google it. They make reusable toilet paper. Houdini are a sporting clothing company. They make sustainable clothing. I think you like the toilet paper one, right?
I'm stuck on the toilet paper, man. You got donuts, you're feeding me, and you're wiping me. This is great.
Yeah. So there are ways. Other things are being done. Let's talk about Brazil for a second. I'm not sure if it's still happening, but the city or the city of Porto Alegre implemented an initiative where the people of the city were involved in deciding the financial budget and what was spent on what. That feeds into the donut. So these things are happening.
All right, we got some great comments here, and I want to get to them all because we have some people that are super engaged on, especially on like YouTube and stuff. So let's see here. Let's see. Fiona saying France is just about as bad as Belgium. Massimo, Henri, we are the true ambassadors, talking about the global mobility community. Susie says,
that's
hi,
Mom. Hi, Mom.
Hey, Mom. How's it going? See, my mom doesn't even watch this show. Your mom's over here watching this. Adam says, Ben mentioned he's been riding his bike to work. Ask him when he learned how to ride.
I can't ride a bike very well. He's right.
Oh, that's great. Michael Atkinson, how does the donut help my pocket? That's funny.
Mike wears trousers with big pockets, so I think he can fit lots of donuts in them. I don't know.
Gurmak says, I'm impressed. It's the first time it's happened in my life.
Thank you.
Let's see here. Jamie brings up an interesting point of view, and this is, I think a lot of Americans would ask this question: how do you implement the donut but still maintain a free society? You could seriously go down a rabbit hole, penalizing nonconformers, towns, or cities. Well, I'm gonna answer this, Jamie, since my name is also Ben. I think this is interesting because we have penalties and fines now, and we're a free society. There's just things that are deemed illegal because they are harmful to society. It could be running a stop sign. It could be choosing not to recycle. In my neighborhood, it's mandatory that you recycle, right? And probably once upon a time that was thought of as onerous, and now it's thought of as obligatory, right? And I think it's more things like that. I'm sure that in times of drought, if you're using water, you're going to get a fine for that as well, right? I mean, are you not free? Perhaps, but is society better? I would say so. So, I mean, I think it is a rabbit hole, and I think you do have to look at it. But I think that we shouldn't conflate rules for lack of freedoms, and that's all I'm going to say about that.
Good answer, Ben. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. J Fact. Society benefits when everyone is as healthy and happy as possible. Let's see here. Gramaka agrees. Jay goes on, reduce crime, more innovation, healthier communities, loving #Doughnut.
Community is. I'm starting the discussion, but it really speaks to me, and I can talk a bit more about community. But it's so fundamental for the success of this to be and feel and be included as part of the community on a social level and also a work level. So I don't know if you want to ask me about that, but it's important. I agree.
Let's see, Henri talking about happiness more. Let's see, Lucretia, what do you think about promote remote working as a more sustainable perspective for global mobility? I mean, she's got a point there, right? You probably lower your carbon footprint pretty considerably.
Yes, I think it's obviously a solution for sure, and I'm not here to just support the donut. I think we need to challenge the donut idea. I think we need to challenge me. And one obvious challenge is that we work in an industry that requires people to travel and fly. So I think remote working is one solution to sustainability for global mobility. But I think coming into the office and connecting with people and seeing people is a real source of creativity and innovation. You can't replicate the water cooler moment where you're speaking to someone and get an idea. So I still think it's good to come into the office if you can cycle, or if it's not as much. But I think remote working is absolutely one way to do that.
Interesting. Shivani, who in the corporate world do you consider to be setting the right example?
Who in the corporate world? Okay, put me on the spot there. I think a company that, from what I have read, that advocates this type of sustainability, and also even from their recruitment based on emotional intelligence, Unilever. I think Unilever do a lot at the moment to promote that. I think Patricia from Brazil may be able to answer that in more detail. But I think Unilever, a company, yeah, I mean, that's probably one answer I would give. But it depends, it's about smaller businesses as well.
Cool. Henri Dussois, that reusable toilet paper is camouflage colored, I'm sure.
It's recycled, but yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's not reusable, it's recycled.
No, I swap policy, yeah.
Yeah, nuances there. Sandra Clary, I have family who live in an area in Alaska that is accessible only by plane and into which it's difficult and expensive to ship new goods. I always marvel at how they use and reuse and repurpose everything as a community.
Community is so important right now. It's important.
Yeah. Let's see here, Shivani, if we were to all fly around the world less with the environment in mind, then what does this mean for the immigration industry? Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I mean, I think we're right now in 2020 facing several existential issues within the global mobility industry. And I mean, this is one. I mean, so we're talking about the environmental impact of mobility. Well, yeah. I mean, what happened?
I understand what is being said, and I love travel. I've had the fortune to travel a lot and even live in different countries, and my family live in Australia and Mauritius, and so I've enjoyed that. And I don't think travel will stop, and I don't want travel to stop. But again, if we focus on sustainable traveling, where we stay, are we staying at a local place that's promoting the community rather than a big 5-star hotel. We can still travel in a sustainable way and promote the environment, promote society, and do things that will actually boost the economies. You know, even where we travel. Why we travel to a lot of the same destinations? Why don't we travel to destinations that requires a boost in their economy, like Mauritius?
Mauritius,
But
Mauritius Travel Bureau over here.
I mean, I know I've got to, I've got to talk to the people there to tell them that when travel is up and running again, I think one place they need to go is Mauritius. It's one of the most beautiful countries in the world.
Well, I will take you up on that one day. Maybe we'll plan a trip to Mauritius. I want to talk about something that you brought up to me about legacy. And actually, I want to put on the poll here, and I want to start a conversation around legacy. This is something I think about. Apparently, it's something that you think about as well. And I want to actually challenge the folks that are watching to be so bold as to leave in the comments, what professional legacy do you aspire to leave behind? You know, what is your professional legacy going to be? I mean, if you, God forbid, you collapse at a conference from a heart attack, at the next conference we all end up going to, you know, what are people going to say about you? You know, I think about this all the time. I'm like obsessed with this question, honestly. So when you brought this up, I was so excited to talk about it. I think it's a conversation that people don't want to have because it involves, I think, your obsolescence is inherent in this. You know, your own demise is inherent in this question. But I love this question. What professional legacy are you trying to leave behind, Ben?
Me, wow.
Well, you thought
no, of course. I love this topic.
You know how this works, right?
Yes, I do. Okay, so I think with legacy, before you think about your legacy, just take a little step back. I think before you can consider your legacy in life, you need to know what your purpose is. You know, going back to purpose, and to know what your purpose is. One thing that has been amazing in the last few months is more than ever before, I've really learned who I am as a person, what my values are.
Just recently.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think the difficulty, Ben, is that we live in a world, not to get too deep, but the first thing is that we are so attached. I love my parents. They're everything for me.
Well,
but we live watching. Exactly. No, I'm kidding. But we need to know what our history is, and it's been amazing finding that out from my aunt and my parents. But in a way, we need to be ourselves. We need to create our own identity, and you know, childhood and parents is one thing, but also we spend so much time with other people at work or with our friends or, you know, in different places and things that we actually need to spend time alone. And I've spent a lot of time alone recently, and I think it's amazing. I kind of see myself as the ambassador of alonement, and I think it should be glamorized. People don't spend enough time alone, and that helps you know who you are. It helps you know what your identity is. It helps you know what your values are, and then you know who you are, and then you can start thinking about what your legacy is, and what you want to do and how you want to be remembered. A simple answer to your question. Sorry. Hello?
So let's bring it back then. So what
my legacy? It's I'm going to take
purpose, and then what is your legacy? Can you like define that?
Okay. I would say my purpose is to create positive change and also to connect people. I have a real passion for connecting people. I love the fact that I've messaged so many people today from Brazil, from Colombia, from Cuba, from Mauritius as well, and connecting. And this is why I love your show, because that's exactly what you do. I know, I think it's fantastic, and that's one of my purposes, but also to make things better and create positive change. In terms of my legacy, I'm going to quote a TV series that is also in the US, but I agree with the answer. The Office. which you have over there, and we have David Brent. I think you have someone else. But in the very last scene of the very last series, I agree with this. It's simply to make a difference in people's lives and to put a smile on the face of everyone I meet. I just want to make people laugh, like make people happy. I think that's probably how I want to be remembered. That's very deep, but that's my answer.
Awesome. No, that's great, man. I mean, that's why we do this show, right? I mean, one of the reasons is I want to get deep, and one of the reasons we go for an hour. Everybody's like, an hour? That's too long. It's like, yeah, well, the first half an hour is just BSing around. The second half of the hour, we're actually getting down to the deep stuff, the meat, So, so I appreciate you sharing that and being vulnerable.
Can I give you one more thing that I think will help your guests and the viewers think about their legacy before we ask them? Is that okay?
No, it's absolutely.
I've obviously been doing a lot of reading and learning, and people at the moment live in a world where everything is short term. It's instant gratification, short term rewards, and people want to buy now. It's normal, right?
Yeah.
And actually, in the 60s, Stanford did a scientific experiment, and it was the marshmallow. See that?
Love these props that just come out of nowhere. Like marshmallow.
What they did
on my desk as an object lesson for the world.
This is this is my kitchen as well. And they did an experiment with children, and they put a marshmallow there, and they waited to see, and said to them, if you can wait a few minutes, 15 minutes, we will give you a second marshmallow, but the condition is you're not allowed to touch that marshmallow. Not many of those children lasted. Everyone thinks in a short-term way, and that's, we have a marshmallow side of the brain, but we also have something else, Ben. This, you can see that?
What the hell is that?
It's an acorn. I got this from one of the trees nearby to where I live, and we have a side of our brain which is called the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. Very mouthy, but what it does is it helps us to train our long-term thinking. It helps us to think long-term. It helps us to plan. It helps us to think about our legacies and how we want to be remembered. So for anyone that wants to think and be more long-term in terms of how they work and live, think about the acorn and think about the marshmallow and decide what you think is the best thing to do. It's just a little idea for people to take home after this. It's a lot, right?
Props. Okay. And then asking me to choose between a marshmallow and an acorn, which to me is not even like a choice that requires any thought, because I've never eaten an acorn, nor do I desire to eat an acorn.
But it's in your brain. So do you want a legacy? And we should all be thinking long term, is what I'm trying to say.
Either eat a marshmallow or I can have a legacy.
Exactly.
But I cannot have a legacy.
You can't have both. You can't have both. It's the acorn brain or the marshmallow brain. You
eat a lot of marshmallows. Okay. All right. You're throwing a lot at me, Sookia. Honestly, a lot.
I'm going to slow down now.
Let's see what the people say about their legacy here. Okay. Michael Quigley, he made a difference. That's cool, Quigley. I like that. Tim O'Brien, is this your legacy? Absolutely right. Do you want people to say that about you when you're gone?
Tim is my neighbor. Communities are everything. Hello, Tim. Thank you for watching. Thanks.
That's awesome. I love him. My neighbor popped in one time on one of these. It was very odd. Mikhail Sookia, empowering my team members. That's cool. That's cool. I like that. Jay Fag, I want to inspire people to be open and curious about each other. This is the key to understanding. Curiosity. And, that's one of those underrated things that keeps popping up on Love and Reload when we talk to people all over the world who have lived all over the world, who work with people who mobilize all over the world. One of the things I keep coming back to, or that people keep bringing up to me, is curiosity. And I just think it's so underrated. And I used to have people, like I used to hire people, and I used to have people that reported to me, and they fixed that, and now I don't. But I used to have this question. I had the worst interview questions. I don't know why I did this, but one of the questions I would ask was, if you wanted to take me to lunch, like to do an interview over lunch, where would you go? Where would you take me? And if they gave me like, oh, we'd go get like something super generic, like, well, we go get a sandwich at the sandwich shop. Like, to me, like, I would put a mark next to their name, you know, in my head. Like, I'm like, I don't like that answer. Like, which is so ridiculous, I think. But for me, it was a way of like sussing out like curiosity. Are you curious about trying different types of foods? Do you have like a curiosity about cultures? I mean, there's, you know, that's what I was trying to solve for. It was a terrible question, but curious.
But that's because you're empathetic, Ben. One of the 6 habits is develop that curiosity, and clearly you have a lot of that, and you wouldn't be doing this show if you didn't. Yeah. So I kind of understand what you're saying.
Yeah, and I like food, and I'm like, well, am I ever going to have a good lunch with this person? No? Okay, you're not hired. Forget about it. Go away. Janelle, how do we learn to be alone rather than lonely?
Wow.
Yeah, how do we learn that?
It's
I struggle with this.
Yeah, no, you struggle with it. It's a difficult skill, you know. I have many friends, and they don't understand why I am comfortable being alone. But I think people struggle with that, because people struggle when you're alone. You kind of struggle with your own thoughts, and it can be a difficult one. I think you don't necessarily have to be alone for an entire evening or weekend. For example, you might be working and with other people, but you might want to go for a walk by yourself, and that 30 minutes by yourself, listening to music. I love to do that. That, you know, so maybe small steps in being alone. But I think, Ben, we need to make being alone cool. We need to make it cool. We need to make it glamorous. People see being alone at the moment as something that's like,
walking through by myself, like, yes, alone, just super 100%. Alone, like, just cool.
Yeah, I have to give a quick shout out to a guy called Alain de Botton. He's a philosopher, and he created an organization called the School of Life, which focuses a lot on emotional intelligence. There's J-Fat. And Alain recently did a podcast on alonement. So Janelle, I can send that to you after this at some point. It's important.
Yeah, we should leave it in the comments for on the YouTube or the Facebook here. We got a ton of people on YouTube right now. Sookia is always banging on about empathy. That's his legacy.
It's true.
The guy that talked about empathy all the time. Yeah, what happened to him? He died. Yeah, crazy stuff. Yeah.
What do you want your legacy to be, Ben?
You know, I thought you'd never ask. You know, very, very similar though, honestly. Just you know, I want people to say that I gave more than I took, you know, that I was always giving, and that I was a blessing to other people in my life, that I was always looking to help other people even before I helped myself. I think, you know, I'm incredibly fortunate in my life and incredibly blessed. And I am a spiritual person, I guess, like that. I think I've been given a lot of blessings, but I think it's such that I'm designed to give a lot of blessings, you know? And so I want that to be my legacy.
Like the king of kindness. I think you're a kind person. That's what I see.
I'm a kind person that likes to pretend that I'm not a kind person, because I'm not comfortable with my vulnerability on that subject, I think is what it is. Yeah, if I may. Henri put the link there to that website, I believe, in here as well. Yeah. Let's see here. We got a couple more people here that are chiming in. I'm hoping to improve society by optimizing workplaces. Elena, all right, I like it. Katie Linehan, poll: positively impact how someone works forward. These are interesting.
Yeah, Ben, if I may, because you mentioned the word.
You may.
I'm British. We're polite, you know. We have to.
So polite. You're assertive but polite. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
I can see how you took over this country for a little while.
Vulnerability.
Yeah.
Another big word, and that I'm super passionate about, and I believe in. And for anyone that wants to learn more about vulnerability, you're from Texas originally, Ben. Is that right?
Dallas. That's correct.
Okay. So, in my opinion, the best thing that ever came out of Houston, Texas, was a lady called Brene Brown.
Brene Brown, sure.
You know of her, right? You may have talked about her before, but she talks about how vulnerability is a strength and not a weakness. And one of the qualities I believe I have is I feel quite comfortable being vulnerable. I feel quite comfortable talking about my feelings. And when you combine vulnerability and empathy, that is when you get connection, and that's when you get innovation, and that's when you get creativity. So another thing that I would encourage people to be is to be okay with being vulnerable in a strong way. Vulnerability is very important.
What does that mean, being vulnerable in a strong way? Help people
Okay.
understand what that means.
Yeah, so to explain, there's different types of vulnerability. Well, there's, in my head, there's two. There's strong vulnerability, and then there's like vomit vulnerability, where I suddenly, it's like, tweet about my really messy breakup, or, you know, like a bad waxing experience or something. Like, no one wants to hear that kind of, no, that never happened, by the way.
Waxing, I'm in that, yeah.
No one wants to hear you go on and on and on. Not, but vulnerability in a strong way, where you can, you know, let's say you're going on a date, or you're in a, you know, business meeting with someone. You're not talking about work too much, or you're at a networking event, for example. When you're vulnerable there in a strong way and saying, "Oh, I don't know anyone here. I'm a little bit nervous," that immediately opens up to someone else actually saying, "Oh, well, I'm a bit nervous too. I don't know anyone." Touching on networking a little bit, that for me, not that you asked, but I'll talk about it anyway. For me, if you want to meet people and form genuine connections, no one likes to meet someone at an event that talks about how successful they are and how everything is going great. That's not how connections are made. Connections are made when we say, well, I'm a bit nervous, or something happened, and then the other person also opens up, and then you have connection, and then you have friendship, and potentially client relationships, or friendships anyway, just generally.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because, you know, talking about success, right? And people probably don't like hearing how successful you are, but they also don't like hearing how unsuccessful you are either.
Yeah.
Because that's that messy breakup kind of vulnerability you were talking about before.
Right.
It's kind of a weird balance that you have to strike, where you can admit that you have some fears about some things, but you also kind of need to, like, you don't want to be a complete train wreck, because people are like, I don't know about that. I want to steer clear, because, you know, they've had a few glasses of wine and they're just
Yes, that can be awkward, and that's exactly what I mean. There's that vulnerability where you say too much, but you want to kind of find the right level and show to people that you are strong but also vulnerable, and that's what people should be looking for, I think.
Yeah, let's see here. Juliana didn't come across, but it says, Juliana says, vulnerability is the key for growth, in my opinion.
I agree.
For sure. Let's see here. Mary Lee wrote a really long comment here. Let's see what it says. I think of my great mentors in my life that had so much passion in the global mobility space, and they like to pass knowledge to teach the next generation and support their careers. So my passion is to share knowledge and develop individuals to be the future of mobility, just like my mentors inspired me to do, and to take that time to teach and help grow others' personal careers. It is important to touch and invest in people's lives. If I touch a life in some way, that means something to me. You know what? There's a moment like this too, Mary Lee, where I was with a guy who was a general, a former general in the Army, and he was retiring, and we were at a conference. And I was hanging out with him. I was probably like 27 years old, you know, and he's retired after probably 30 years and highly decorated, you know, and we're standing at the bar, you know, and all these people just form like a processional, and they all start talking to this guy and coming up to him. And, you know, oh, General Scheid, it was a pleasure working with you at Fort Belvoir. And, you know, Mark, it was so wonderful serving under you. You're such an inspiration. And he turned to me, he's like, Ben, I don't know who half these people are. And he's like, it's not who you know, it's who knows you. And I think the other thing in that moment, though, that I realized was what it looks like to have a profound impact on a lot of people's lives. Like that's what, frankly, like that's what I want my kids. I want my kids to go through that. Like my dream, my legacy is like, as I want my kids one day to be standing there and people just come up to them and say, your dad had a big impact on me, and be able to tell them that and be able to pass that along to them. You know,
that's I appreciate you sharing that, Ben. That's quite a big thing to say. And there's a reason why I have photos of my parents, but also my nieces and nephews, because I want them to feel the same way. You want to leave that's part of your legacy again.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Jana Masick says, impact by raising self-awareness and personal empowerment globally. Yeah, empowerment. That's you, Jana, in a big way. It's good to hear from you too. Henri Dussois, it's to be a solid bedrock where others will build. Interesting. I love the service in there as well. Ben, I could talk to you for a long time. This is a lot of fun. We're kind of running out of time, so I want to be cognizant of that, because I know there's people that are up it's 1 o'clock in some places and they're still watching this. But what is a kind of a final thought that I'm going to just leave it open to you, a final thought that you'd like to share with folks?
Yeah, if it's I keep saying if it's okay, I'm going to give you a final thought and then a shout out to 2 people, if that's okay.
Spoiler alert.
My final thought, the 3 takeaways I want people to have from this is: to know your purpose, you need to know who you are, and you need to know what your values are. So really get to know yourself and get to know who should fit into your world. If you go to a networking event, who belongs in your community, or whose community do you want to be in? Because that way you will work and live in a healthier way and a happier way.
Okay, I have a question about this. I know we were saying we wrap it up and everything, and then people are like saying no need to stop, and I'm like, okay, well, if that's how you feel. Okay, question, because I'm struggling with this right now, right? Who do you want to be in your community? How do you determine who you want to be in your community?
I think, but it really goes back to knowing what your values are and what you stand for as a person. I think when I started in my career, I would go to networking events, and it was about maybe knowing who the important people were there.
Right. That's how most people do. They walk in like, oh, that's the CEO of such and such. Oh, that's the president of such and such. I hate those people. Go ahead.
I do. I agree with you, Ben. Imagine how much a networking event, I love them now, but I understand why people have anxiety or don't, because they feel they need to be someone else at this event where other people are behaving in a way that's not natural. But networking events and these conferences would be completely different if we're completely ourselves and completely comfortable in our skin. And then, yes, we slowly get to meet people, and people that are authentic. Authenticity is another big word of mine, a big buzzword.
Yeah.
And that's how we kind of know, yes, this person belongs, they believe in the same things that I do. So that's the first takeaway. The second takeaway is to think about your legacy, but not just your legacy. It's not just about your children or your nieces or nephews. Think about the world around them, or think about the children they will have, or the children's children that they will have, and the air that they will breathe in 100 years, or the water that they will swim in, and the communities and networks that they're a part of. So be empathic about the whole planet and the whole world. Think about the donut. And the third thing is, I've been really deep tonight, so I think we just need to smile and just kind of not take life too seriously and have fun and laugh.
Think about the entire world and be empathic. Hey, damn, cool. Like, you can't say those two things. That can't be.
I mean, nothing is more important than my football team, first of all. So as serious as we've been, Ben, I think no one should take themselves too seriously. A big thing about my culture and my family is that we all laugh at each other. We my best friends as well. We know how to not be too heavy, because we're all going to die anyway. You might as well just have a good time and a party and a drink too, right?
I agree with that. People are asking questions here, and it's my show, so I get to do what I want. So I'm gonna just go for a little longer because I feel like it.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and I'm not even gonna ask you because I'm not British, so I'm not gonna ask you first if it's okay. I'm just gonna do it because I'm American and we're oafish.
I like that though. Like, it's good to be direct. British people can be too polite, and I think we have a great sense of humor. I think we're sarcastic, but I think you should be direct. Why not? I love American people, for sure.
Yeah. Cool, thank you. Just thinking about British people. Do you mind if I occupy you? Would you care to be occupied for 200 years? How does a 99-year lease sound? All right. Annette says, how do you suggest that people learn or define what their values are, what they stand for? Most people haven't stood still long enough to evaluate and actually define and know.
It's a good question. It took me time. I never used to think about these things and until I learned about empathy. But I think you, on top of knowing who you are, you need to look at your history. My family from Mauritius, but I am who I am because of how my parents, how my brothers brought me up, to be kind, to be polite, to be authentic, to trust, to be honest. So I think defining what my values are, a lot of that came from my childhood and how I was brought up. And I didn't think about that every day. Over the course of my career, I thought about it and I kind of tied the dots. And then one last slide. I have this on my wall.
I like how you took everything from your house and you set it around you, and you're like, "Hey, this is another abstract here."
It's true, but I think to define what your values are, you have to look at
it or no? What was
if you want, again, like it has trust at the very top there.
Okay. I see highlighted, but they all made the sheet, but some are like specific.
It's true. The ones that matter to me, I highlighted. And you need competence, and you need authenticity, and you need to be decent. So you need to know what you're doing, and that's to be good at your job. But to define your values, I think not just know who you are, but look back at how you were brought up. Not just your parents as well, but your parents' parents. My parents came to the UK in the 1960s. My mum came here in 1962. They had an incredibly different and difficult life at the start. They came from a very small island, and they learnt to adapt. They had to adapt. I mean, imagine coming from a small island in Africa to the UK in 1962 or in the 60s. So adaptability is another value of mine, I think, and that ties into empathy. So I have to say that my values come from my parents and my upbringing.
Yeah, and I think, Annette, this is fantastic. And so while Ben was talking, I was thinking as well about how I would answer this question. And I think a lot of times who you are is defined by what you are not, right? Definitions are boundaries, right? They separate things that you are and things that you aren't, right? And so I say if you're searching for who you are, search first maybe for what you're not, right? And start to fill that list in, right? Because sometimes those are a little more obvious, right? So things that I don't stand for, things that make me cringe, or things that make me sick to my stomach, or make my blood boil, or whatever. Define the negative, and then you can understand maybe the positive. So, back into it that way. But yeah, I think it's interesting. Most people haven't stood still long enough to know what they stand for. And that's a great question. Juliana says, Ben, tell us a little bit about how to be effective with networking and how it can be difficult for people struggling with confidence. And that's from Juliana.
So I've touched on the networking, but I think confidence is something that we've not talked about much. And I think lots of us struggle with confidence. I know I certainly have, and I still do. I was obviously a bit nervous to do this earlier on today. My response to people that feel that they need to develop confidence skills is to remember that, or to realize that no one is normal, Ben. No, everyone. I think you probably realize we are all a little bit weird, is what I'm trying to say.
Right.
I know I am. Yeah. And what I'd say is everyone is a little bit weird. So if you walk into an event or go to a conference, and if you have in your head that, yeah, I feel a bit weird, or maybe not good enough, or I need confidence, every person in that room in some way probably has felt that they're weird or not okay. One of the things that I learned in a course that I did just before lockdown is that every human being has an inner idiot. Okay, every human being has an inner idiot. We are all fallible. We're all a bit silly. I know I'm clumsy. And
what's an inner idiot, though? What is that? I'm just.
I think we feel insecure. I felt insecure. We feel that we lack confidence. We feel that we're not good enough. What I'm trying to say is, imposter syndrome is very common at the moment.
Huge.
Not at the moment. It's a common. It's always been common.
The more you accomplish, the more imposter syndrome can even set in.
I think so. I believe so. I still have been on. I did a conference in February, and I was moderating, and I felt, what am I doing with these people that have had 20, 30 years of experience? I don't belong. So I think it's a big issue, and we need to talk about it and be vulnerable. And just think, the next time you go to a conference, or whether it's virtual or in real life, I have a bit of an idiot, but so does everyone else. We're all a bit silly and a bit goofy and a bit clumsy. So, and I hope that will help.
Yeah, and I think, Juliana, it's a great question, and I think that, to Ben's point, realizing that people struggle with the same lack of confidence and the same insecurities and the same issues, I think is one thing. One of the aha moments for me is when I started to meet these people who I held up on this pedestal in my mind, right?
Yeah.
When I started to interface with them more, and I realized that they're telling the same jokes, they're complaining about the same stuff, they have the same pet peeves and the same whatevers. They just, maybe had a nicer suit or drove a nicer car, had a better business card, but they're complaining about all the same stuff. And frankly, I was like underwhelmed with someone once I got to actually know them. I'm like, wow, you're like actually not that bright, or you're actually not that, actually not that good of a person. You're kind of a jerk. You're kind of like a bad person. Like, and so when I realized, like, wow, these people like suffer, like, to your point, from the same stuff that we all do, put things in more perspective. I think one of your family members really appreciates your preparedness.
Thank you. Thanks.
That's great. That's great. People are really enjoying the talk here as well. Janaina.
So someone mentioned the Khalid shirt, and that was one of my shout outs. So I've not mentioned him that much or at all, but I'd like to kind of dedicate this conversation to Khalid, but not Khalid that the Khalid, the Khalid actually, or Khalid, who's my dad. He's a top man. He's a funny guy. He's a leader, and so he's a mentor of mine. So I hope he enjoys the conversation. The T-shirt is for him today, not the R&B singer. So yeah, I'm glad that you like the Khalid shirt.
Oh, that's awesome, man. That's great. You shout out to your dad, man. Shout out to your dad. I had my dad on the show.
I saw, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. That's great. That's fantastic. They're saying we should have a part 2 of this discussion. This is so funny.
I'm up for it.
Yeah, me too. But it's so funny because, I think there's so much meat here, and I think there's so much stuff that people need to hear. But it's not necessarily going to be the top rated, top most people checked into, because they can't sell you something or me something, or there's like all these reasons that we watch stuff and we support things on LinkedIn and whatnot, and it's something as a content creator. It's like, we talk about deep, meaningful things. We talk about changing the world for the better. We talk about changing ourselves for the better. We talk about impacting people's lives and leaving legacies, and probably some of the most important topics that we could talk about. And people don't support it because it's like, why support the donut? It's like, what is it going to do for me now? People are out there eating marshmallows when they should be planting trees, and it's just, it's funny to me. But I applaud everybody that stuck around here and contributed to the conversation. This has been great. Let me see. I just want to go through some of these comments here. Shivani, we all hold different values important, which can lead to conflict, and sticking to your values risk damaging your relationships. Hey, that's a great question. Here we are in an election year in the United States, and I know a lot of families are on different sides of issues. This happens quite often, professional relationships as well. What do you do? Relationships or values?
Yeah, it's a good question. Again, I've thought about this, and I think my response to you, Shivani, is that you have to stay true to yourself. You have to stay true to yourself, and you have to stay true to your values. And I stay true to my values. I'm the football club that I support, Arsenal. I love their values. I love the leader of that, the former leader of that team, Arsene Wenger. He always talked about staying true to your values and being quite tenacious in sticking to the identity and the culture that you've created. Yes, it can damage your relationship, but you have to think about whether you will be happy long term in a relationship, whether it's work or a personal relationship, if someone is not aligned with your values. Because for me, I've had experiences professionally where in the past where the organization or the team or whatever reason hasn't matched my values, and it didn't make me happy. I think going back to me saying that I really have got to know myself, I feel quite free and more liberated than I ever have, because I really understand who I am and what is important to me, long term. So stay true to yourself is my answer to that.
That's interesting. So people are starting to kind of come through here in the comments, and some are just funny, but some are great. Janet Turner. Janet, you and I talk about this all the time. Yeah. Relationships, love is the greatest calling, right? Where there's people who are close to you in your life who, and then Antimo goes on to say values. You can always build new relationships, right? Well, you can't get a new dad. You can't get a new wife. You can't get a new father-in-law or a new mom or there's people in your life that are irreplaceable.
Exactly.
And so I think it's like kind of one of these like situations where values are extremely important. People are also extremely important, and there might be certain things that we disagree on.
Yeah.
But I might agree with you on 99% of things, but there's one thing. Or I might be friends with you for 3.5 years, and all of a sudden it's election season, and all of a sudden it comes out that we're on different polar opposites of some issue or some candidate. This is my favorite thing. We have candidates who we've never met in our entire life, who live in a place we've never visited, to drive a wedge in between the love that we've had for years.
Wow.
I think it's just mind-boggling when you think about how little and insignificant this president or prime minister or world leader is, but yet how divisive it can be, and within a family, within friendships, within whatever. And so I hope people that are watching this, that are in the US and other parts of the world, because this holds true in a lot of countries, are watching this and realizing that, in my opinion, we shouldn't, we talk about not taking ourselves so seriously. We shouldn't take politics so seriously.
No.
That's my take on that.
Yeah. And also, wouldn't life be boring if we all just agreed? Like I pick my friends based on them being honest with me. And I think like debating and disagreeing is pretty healthy, and it's a lot of fun, I think.
Yeah. Anyway, this is great. I think, we're starting to lose people. They're starting to go drink. This has been wonderful. I really, really, really appreciate this, Ben. I blanked on your name for a second. That's
no worries. Can I do a quick shout out before we go? Is that okay?
I mean, just take the rest of the show.
So there are people that are watching this in Mauritius, and it's past midnight there. So just a few words. I know that I said I wouldn't talk in another language, but just because I'm connected to my culture. So, Kuban Tamian Maurice, moi espérez êtes bien intéressé, bien content, mon cause aux autres, et al dormir hasta là. Go to bed, like it's late. So thank you for joining. And yeah, no, and I have a friend in Cuba as well. And a year ago, there wasn't even internet for them to dial in and watch this. So I appreciate her watching it as well. And yeah, thank you for having me, Ben. It's been a lot of fun, and I hope interesting for you too.
Yeah, it's been fantastic. Hey, everybody, go ahead and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube or on Facebook. Go ahead and follow us. Hit that like button, hit that heart button. Let's send Ben out with a bang. I appreciate all of you so much for being so involved in the comments, being vulnerable yourselves, and asking all these fantastic questions. It's been a lot of fun meeting all Ben's friends and family as well. Thanks, everybody, for coming in. Tomorrow on Love and Relo, we got Jody Harris from Johnson Controls. Here in the States. She's a global mobility manager with a global program over there. So that should be a lot of fun. And I appreciate all of you. Thank you so much. Thanks again, Ben. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Have a good one. Bye.
Take care, everybody.